So if we quickly go through the rest of the digestive tract, I know we've got a lot to get through. You'll see this graphic several times. The stomach is really small in relation to the rest of the digestive system. It's full of acid that is going to break down the food. If I cut a window in the stomach and let you look inside, there are two distinct regions. The top section, which I call the non-protected region, and the bottom section, that dark pink tissue, which I call the protected region. And it's protected by this slippery, slimy mucus coating. And what is it protecting from? So there are cells in the bottom part of the stomach that continually secrete acid, and that acid is there to break down food. But unlike a dog or a cat that have a meal response, so they sense, smell, see food, and then they'll start to secrete acid as a meal response, the horse doesn't have that. They're continually secreting acid. And that's why we want to be continually allowing them something to chew on, mimicking that grazing behavior when we put them in stalls, because that acid production is in place for a horse that is continually grazing. They're continually chewing, they're continually swallowing saliva, continually diluting that stomach acid. If we move then to the small intestine, it's like a big long garden hose. If you lay it out, it's about 70 feet in length. There are enzymes here in the small intestine that break down food. Unlike in the stomach where we have the acid, here we now have enzymatic digestion. There's a particular enzyme called amylase, and we know that it's responsible for breaking down starch, but we also know that there's only a certain amount of it in the small intestine at any given time. There's not bucket loads of amylase. And so there are certain rules that we say about feeding horses. Don't feed large meals, large grain meals, and that's because the stomach is really small. And make sure that you're feeding processed grains to your horses as well. We don't want to feed a lot of whole grains to horses, whole corn, whole barley, because that amylase is just not able to break down those starch molecules. So we want to make sure, unlike in human nutrition where we are getting bombarded with how we should be eating whole foods and a whole grain diet, and we try to apply that to our horses, and it really just doesn't work. Horses aren't really designed to eat a lot of grain, period, but we have to get them to eat grain because we need them to maintain energy levels and body weight. So we need to make it safer for them. So we're going to process those grains, add other digestive aids like live cell yeast that are going to help break down and maintain good quality bacteria as well. From here on back, this is the hindgut of the horse. It starts with the cecum. The cecum is a blind sac. It's like a balloon. So it's easy for gas to get stuck in here, things to build up here, because the entry and exit point are the same portal. From here on back, we have bacterial or microbial fermentation that's continuing to break down the food. And all of this whole region, its primary ingredient that it should be breaking down is fiber. If we move to the large colon, I've got it highlighted here in blue. It twists and turns. You can see the rate of passage to get through this section of the digestive system is significantly longer than the stomach or the small intestine. The stomach, it can be as little as 30 minutes to get through the stomach, up to 4 hours to get through the small intestine. And now we're looking at 35 hours and upwards to get through the large colon. When those bacteria are breaking down the fiber, one of the byproducts they create is heat. So as we go into the cooler months and we think about ways that we can keep our horses warm, this one of the simplest things you can do is provide plenty of fiber, plenty of hay. And it really doesn't have to be the most leafy, stemmy, digestible hay. Actually, if it's a little more stemmy, then the harder those bacteria work to break down that fiber, the more heat that they will create. In the small colon, we're just really absorbing moisture out of the non-digested food particles and forming fecal balls. If we're seeing excess water in the manure, diarrhea, or fecal water syndrome, then we can be pretty rest assured that there's something going on in the hindgut of the horse, that they're not able to absorb that moisture.